Welcome back to Confessions of a Recruiter with Blake and Declan. We are on a global mission to build the world's largest community of recruiters so we can all connect and succeed together.
That's right. If you want to check out more of Confessions of a Recruiter, jump onto confessions.tv, subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter, access merch, and if you want to chat to us directly, join our Discord at XR House with the links below. Now, we hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Recruiter. We're buzzing from last week's event, Confessions Live, and today it's going to go to a new level with Liz Kingston from Kingston Human Capital. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, good to be here.
Well, just to start with, we finally got you on the podcast because you did bail from us a couple of weeks ago.
100%.
So I know you're a busy woman, and I'm glad we've been able to steal an hour of your time today. So your background is really impressive. So firstly, you're almost at your 11-year mark with Kingston Human Capital. Prior to that, Randstad.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, Link. That got acquired by Randstad.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing longevity. We were just talking about it just then. But walk us through kind of your career and what got you into recruitment, and then how that transition to Randstad happened.
Like so many of us, I went for an interview with a recruiter who said, "You're going to be a great recruiter. Would you like a job with us?" That was a teeny tiny boutique, and week one was literally, here is a phone book. Go and make 50 phone calls and you can keep your job if you get 5 jobs on. So that lasted for a couple of years.
That were literally the words.
Yes.
Wow, that's a 10% strike. That's amazing. That's good odds.
Oh, yeah. They were 50 awkward phone calls. Like, they were so bad because I'd never cold called in my life. I feel really bad for the people I approached. Like, it was
What jobs on did you get? Because you obviously got them, and now look at the results.
Sales retail jobs. It was a retail recruiter called Integral. And we worked really hard at what we did, and that's how I learnt recruitment. After that, I went across to Link, which was a national firm. Really exciting time, incredible team. And then after Link got bought out by Randstad, I onboarded with Randstad, the big global powerhouse that they are today. So a great career with Randstad, learnt a lot. I loved that, going from a small environment to a medium environment to a large corporate. And then just after the downturn, I was made redundant. I did a little bit of a tour of duty and decided I think I'm going to have a go at building my own recruitment firm.
You know, that's super impressive, because going from working in a role being made redundant, I'm assuming you might have been feeling a little down.
Totally crushed. I loved my job. I loved my team. So yes, it had a big impact on my self-confidence, my self-esteem, and my worth at the time.
So then how did you go from like a crushed mojo to then going to get the confidence to start your own agency? Like, walk us through the kind of the moment there where you thought, you know what, actually, I'm just going to do this for myself.
I moved through it without being confident to do it. So sometimes, even though you don't think you're ready, or perhaps you're not, fully cooked to do something, if you could just move through that period and stop holding yourself back and go and do it anyway. So don't wait for the feeling, just start. So, I had a little bit of a sulk, took some time out of the market, felt sorry for myself, and then thought, right, you're never going to be ready. What is the worst that could happen? I'll get egg on my face. I'll be really embarrassed, and then I'll sulk again. So I just started.
Amazing. So we hear a lot from a lot of people. It's got to be the right time. Timing's not right. But in your case, you thought timing's never going to be right. It sounds like I may as well just do it. How did you come to that conclusion though? Because did you come to that conclusion yourself, or did you speak to like family, friends? Did anyone just say to you like, hey, what are you doing? You can do this for yourself, and that's what gave you the confidence? Or how did you come to the conclusion of, oh, let's just do it, even though I'm not ready, I'll be ready if I just try?
Well, I got a little bit of column A and column B. So a lot of my family hugely supportive, but at the same time, they've never been entrepreneurial. So the advice from that camp was, do not do it. Go and get a great job in a great recruiter and you'll be set up. You'll have another great career arc. advice from friends was you should do it. You know, you're capable of a lot of things. And then just sat with it and went, right, we're going to have an attempt. And then I made a deal with myself. I thought, right, if you could do it and you can stay in it for 3 years, let's just see what happens.
And what were those first 3 years like? Because you didn't start with a business partner? He started later?
Yeah, Gerard came into the business a year later. Such a great move. But the first year, I didn't love it. I missed working with people. I was working from the front room of my Queenslander, which no air conditioning. It was awful. And I had to build my way to being able to pay for team members, an office, you know, all the nice things that we have. So I didn't love it. It was hard. But you can do a lot when you just, you know, when you decide, right, this is it.
And what desk did you build up at Randstad before losing it?
I built up a couple of desks all in the accounting and finance space. It was account support and senior finance and accounting. And then once I started my own practice, I started off as a generalist. I was fortunate enough to pick up some great clients that needed scaling quickly. So I was able to do a large number of roles for a small number of clients and grow with them.
And was coming out of the recession similar to coming out of COVID, for example, when you went through that?
It's got similar elements, but they have different characteristics. COVID was just such a weird thing. And then all of a sudden, you know, boom, we're all smashing our targets again and we weren't wanting for work. It was raining on us. Coming out of the recession, I feel like it was more conservative. It was more definitely a slower return to winning jobs. Deals were also a little bit tighter to negotiate. And also companies were really interested in the financial stability of what was the company at the time.
Which recession? Are we talking 09 or are we talking 13?
09.
Was there a recession in 2013?
So if in Queensland, we still continued to experience kind of the economic impacts through to 2012 and 2013. But yeah, globally it happened in 2009.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because that's why they let you go from Randstad, you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was in 2013 though?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it was delayed in Australia.
Getting through it.
Oh, okay. And so did you have any concern that, like, if I don't do this, how am I going to, like, afford to pay my rent, my mortgage, or my life?
Yes. I had a big mortgage.
So walk us through how that happened, because that's pretty scary. You're going from, a family of, career people, and then going to getting made redundant from Randstad because of the economy's down, to then, all right, I'm going to go a commission-only recruitment role, basically, for 12 months and work out of my Queenslander. Did you have any concerns or thoughts around how much money have I got in the bank, how much money that's going to last me, or like was there a formula there on that, and can you walk us through it?
So the formula was concern, and not sleeping very much. And it was scary. I had bills to pay, I had a lot of bills to pay, and I just in those first 3 months had to wing it. And I also thought, right, I'm going to get very tight terms on my terms of business, and I'm also going to ask for retained work because I need cash coming in the door, and then I need it coming in quick again. So I, when I would work with a client, it was 14-day terms, and there were payments up front. So did that work all the time? No. There were times I had to take contingent work. You've got to be able to pay the bills, but shortening those cash flow cycles and also being okay with asking my clients to pay their bill. Yep. If they were sitting on a bill, I would ring and say, hey, I need you to pay it.
Yeah.
There's that was a very basic formula, and also just being okay to sit in that, getting comfortable being scared for a lot of the time. I had to master that.
And how did you do that? Like, we were chatting about mindset before. Was there anything through that period that you could implement? Say recruiters starting a new job, they're building a cold desk, they're nervous, or going out on their own. What strategies or what did you implement to be able to deal with that fear or that constant anxiety almost while
So
you're going, because you've got to be happy and selling at the same time. Like
yeah, you
we've all
can't
been
come
there.
across like you're
No.
desperate, because that, people can read that. They call it commission's breath out there in
Yeah.
the industry. They see a recruiter coming who's in desperate mode, and they have that sense of please back off. So how did I work through it? One, mindset. I think it's okay to be scared, and you say to yourself, I'm scared. Can I do anything about it? Not a lot. Should I do this anyway? Yep. Is it going to be uncomfortable? Yep. Am I going to die? No. Keep moving. And then from a cash flow perspective, the second I realized that I wasn't skilled, that I didn't know how to cash flow a business, when that penny dropped, I went out and read as much information as I could, spoke to as many people as I could. And you can alleviate a lot of that anxiety by upskilling yourself in the area you've got that deficit in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
And there's lots of information.
Yeah, because I learned one thing that you said the other day about the head of Google, the voice in your head.
Yeah.
That it's not real, and sometimes you get some crazy thoughts. You're never going to action them, but you just talk to the voice in your head and you call her, find a name, Helen or something. I think.
Yeah. So for context, I was listening. Do you listen to the podcast Diary of a CEO?
Yes.
So they had, I can't remember his name, but he was chief director of Google X. So Google X is like the hectic version of Google. They do like robots and artificial intelligence and rockets to the moon and all that kind of stuff. And he was talking about the formula of happiness. And he was referring to a few things on how to be happy and talking to the voice in his head. He calls it like Margaret. And, Margaret says, go push that person out in front of a bus. That's not actually you telling yourself to push someone out in front of the bus. You talk to that voice in your head and you go, that's a stupid idea. And then you don't do it, right? Because you rationalize with the voice in your head. But apparently some people don't have this voice in the head. Do you have a voice in your head?
Oh, I feel like I've got a few.
Yeah, Deanna's like, what voice? I don't have a voice. I'm like, surely you've got a voice.
No,
My
mate.
come
co-founder,
home and
Gerard
go,
Kerr,
"You're
he
so-"
doesn't. He has said he doesn't.
He doesn't
He's
have
got
one.
no voice.
He's got like calm, nothing.
See, I negotiate with the voice in my head and I go, oh, no, I
Mate,
don't know. That's not a good way.
That voice in the head won the cookie battle last night, mate. When you were
Yeah, it was telling me to go get those cookies.
I think those people without the voice in their head, the people that can be calm and just 100% focused on what's at hand, they are masters, right? They're not half involved in an internal battle.
Yeah, they got the cheat sheets of life. They just get to get through easy.
Yes.
Is that
They're
good?
great for us. They're great for people with lots of voices going on in their head.
So there's a minority of people that don't have a voice. Do they have an advantage or a disadvantage?
I think we could argue it anyway.
Yeah, me too.
But here's the other thing I think is an important point. A lot of life and information is telling us being scared is bad, being uncomfortable is bad. Not in it, whenever you are in any form of duress, a lot of the social messaging is, oh, you shouldn't be there. But actually, if you can get okay with being out of your depth, being scared, I think there's mastery in that. I think we need to move the messaging away from you got to be happy all the time.
Well, that's
To be
why I
like-
liked what you said, because I totally agree. I think there's too much, and people think they need to be happy, and then they look at cheap thrills for happiness, and then they don't actually achieve.
You guys should listen to this podcast. Basically, I'll summarize it in a few sentences. A lot of the people out there that go on about depression will not like it, but happiness is a choice. Is essentially what he has come to the conclusion on. Because his son died when his son was 20, and he was getting like a 2.5 second surgery, and apparently 5 things went wrong in a row, which is like a quadrillion% chance that doesn't happen, and it did, and he died within like 30 minutes of getting like a small like operation on his hip or something in this hospital. And he was talking about how to become happy and the voice in his head and all this kind of stuff. And this guy's a super intelligent guy, but basically he just came up with, he has a rule of 3 questions he asks himself. I might butcher this, so just bear with me. Is it true? So if something happens, you got to ask, is this actually true? Because your perception or someone else's perception on the matter might not be reality.
Mm-hmm.
Is it true? Can I do anything about it? And then if it's true, yes. Can I do anything about it? No. Then you've got to be happy.
Exactly what Liz just said 5 minutes ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
But they said it better.
okay. All right. Well, there we go. Well, I'm glad I'm just repeating things that Liz says in a different way. We're really getting somewhere. So I actually want to still just press a little bit more on your first 12 months of starting your agency. When did you do your first deal?
I think it was 6 weeks in.
That's pretty good.
Thank you.
Nice. Was it a perm fee?
Yeah.
How much was it?
I think it was $12,000, and I still have the invoice framed.
Bullshit. That's awesome. That's so good. And so what was the feeling like when you got 12 grand put in your bank account? Was it a penny drop, or what was that moment like?
It was just relief, because considering what my bank account was at, there was absolute relief, because I knew, okay, bills, mortgage, eating out, I can do that for another month.
Yeah, nice. That's so good. And so so the first 12 months, what was the difference between your first 12 months billing in business in comparison to your last 12 months billing in agency?
Oh, that's a great question. So there's a lot of differences. Now, instead of, what's the best way to answer this? Differences in the last 12 months.
Well, what did you bill 12 months prior to leaving Randstad?
I think when I was still on a desk at Randstad, I did 1.3.
Holy
on a
shit.
It was a temp desk, so it's easier to do that.
Yeah.
And then I was in a non-billing role when I was made redundant at Randstad just prior to leaving, so I wasn't billing at that stage.
Okay, so 1.3, that's total revenue, or is that GP?
Temp GP.
Oh, that's huge.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
It was a busy desk.
And you didn't bill 1.3 in your first 12 months of business.
I wish I couldn't even do temp in my first year.
Yeah.
No, it was just perm. And in the first year of driving my own desk, I think I did about 320. And you know what? I was okay with that.
100%.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what did the decision make to bring a partner on? What was your thought process there, and how did it come about?
I think it was
worked with each other in the past.
Yeah, and we were a really great team. And I think in understanding what a business needs to scale, as a founder, I think you need to get really clear on what you're great at, but also even more clear on what you're not great at. And I'd had a great relationship with Jed in the past, and he has a skill set that is absolutely opposite to what I have. So in combination, we knew we could build really, really quickly. It took me a while to bring him on board. I had to approach him a number of times and say, come across. But the decision was that, one, we worked together well. We'd been through some trying times. We worked together under pressure. And I think that's what you've got to look for if you're going into a partnership, because everybody gets along when it's not a shit show. The second it's getting really tough, I think that's where you see how your partnership really thrives or not, and how do you conflict? How do you stay in a disagreement, but where it's in a healthy zone? You can disagree fiercely, but you don't fall into an argument or the conflict zone. So in knowing his capabilities, in knowing he had capabilities that I don't, it was a really easy decision.
And is that just like an itemized list on what you think you're good and not good? Do you get other people's opinions? How do you, because some things you think you're really good at, some people would go, oh, you're not.
Yeah. I should have got other people's opinions, but it was an itemized list. And I just went through it and thought, right, this is the action we're going to take.
Okay, so you've approached Jed. You said, hey, Jed, you've got a really complementary skill set to me. Do you want to come and work as a director with me? What was the next step then? Did you have to go to lawyers and do like a shareholders agreement and figure out like if this happens and that happens? What was like the process there for anyone else that, let's say, they've got their own agency, they're thinking about bringing a partner on? What would you recommend the best step is to then consider a partner and then like have it all tied up?
I think it depends on the structure of your business that you are starting from, and also what sort of equity or shareholdership you're going to do. What I would say is don't do it yourself, because the agreements you set up today need to serve you if you have a fallout with your partner down the track. So it was about looking at what's a fair and equitable setup. What are the legal structures that we need to build around this? What is the constitution? What are the shareholder deeds? Really working through what is the shareholder deed, because that's your instruction manual for if this, then that. It governs how you behave in certain situations in future. If there's an exit event, if you're acquired by another company, your shareholder and your constitution is something that other organisation is really interested in, because it can snag them if it doesn't work perfectly.
Hey, just wanted to jump in here. We got a confessions hotline, so give us a call, send us a text if you want to share any juicy stories, or even just ask a question that's been on your mind, because we'd love to hear from you. The phone number is 0485 865 483. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Can I ask is it 50-50?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you manage if one person is pulling more weight than the other? So like, I'm just going to use a scenario and you'll be able to connect the dots on this question. If you're sitting there billing $1 million, Jed's sitting there billing 300 grand and going on holidays all the time, how do you manage that outcome to be fair and equitable? Because technically he gets, if it's $1 million plus his 300, it's 1.3, you get 750 is it 750? No, 650 to share. So you essentially not lose, but you go 50-50 in the profit at the end of the day. Have you guys ever had that discussion? Has that ever come up before? How would you handle that?
I don't know how I'd handle it. I'd have to really sit down and do some quality thinking on it. And right now I'm in a non-billing role. My job is to grow the organisation. So Jed is doing a line share of the billings right now, and I'm the one not contributing in terms of a revenue to our P&L. So, is it about what is fair, or is it about everybody generating revenue? I'm lucky that I don't have to be in a revenue generating role at the moment because of our business model. I would argue it's always a case of what is fair and what is equitable, because when things don't feel fair and don't feel equitable, that's when I think you have friction between your partnership teams or your founding partners. And in terms of, taking profit away, that argument is removed for us, because we just reinvest it all in the business so we can continue to grow.
So are you more of like a mentor, leader, trainer to the team, and Jed
heads up our executive recruitment division.
Yep.
So he does a lot of client acquisition, executive recruitment delivery, and he rainmakes for that team. Yep. That's his specialisation, and he is incredibly good at that. For me, my role is operations, training, marketing, and client acquisition.
Cool.
And contracts.
Yeah, because we've spoken to a lot of agency owners who have gone into partnership with each other and then it's disintegrated in 12 months. And I mean, I'm just generalizing here, but usually it's because, the reason has been in the past is two people come in, both very different skill sets like you're explaining. One person's a high biller, one person's more of a manager, leader, whatever it might be. And then one person's kind of growing the team, one person's bringing in all the money, and there's like a disjoint in values of like what each person's contributing. It's like, oh, you're not really billing, but you're kind of looking after the team, and how do you put a tangible, like a value on that? And I'm bringing in this money, and then there's like a discrepancy on some sort of disjoint, and then it kind of falls apart. You've noticed that with a few people we've spoken to?
Yeah, definitely.
And so you've avoided that. So kudos to you.
And especially in a perm business.
Yeah, I don't think we were able to avoid that in the beginning. And sometimes I think some organisations move to having a non-billing manager too early because it's really important to stay on the tools and generate revenue for as long as you can. But there is a point in your business model where your financial model is sound, your revenue flows are set up, your PSAs are set up, or your panel agreements, and there is a moment where you're confident in the model itself, you have proof that it works, and then you can work through the ROI on what happens if one of us works on growing the business in a non-billing role. So you can get through that with, just as you have revenue KPIs, You have growth KPIs. So, how many incredible new recruiters can we onboard? How well can we set up our marketing funnels? What efficiencies can be built in the back end of the business so our recruiters are spending more time with their clients and candidates and less time in admin. So if you put really firm and clear outcomes around that and both parties are still delivering, I think it looks clearer and it seems fairer. It also gives the other person an opportunity to say, hey, you're in a non-billing role, but you're also not hitting your non-billing KPIs. And then that's a fair argument.
Yeah.
That's a discussion that needs to be had.
And what do you think's a good size business, or where you got to when you said, all right, now's a good time to be a good billing role?
Great minds and
We're in
Goliath.
sync.
In terms of, it's a hard one to tell because it really it depends on your model, the maturity of your recruiters, the length of your contracts. Have you been able to break into any subscription type services where you get a very predictable income from certain clients per year?
What's that?
Recruitment as a subscription. Imagine if you could identify an organization.
Have you done it?
It's early stages.
Come
and
on,
we're
share. What are you doing?
It's an early stage experiment, but I believe there's organisations out there that we as recruiters can offer more to, because one organisation who knows you, you know them, and you are their recruiter who places all of their roles. You might do it through a team, your team, or your specialists in each of their desks, but imagine instead of just taking, $100,000 from a client per year, if you can take, $1 million and pick up all of their recruitment work, you can offer their CFO significant value by saying to them, you know what, these peaks and troughs in your recruitment fees, we're going to smooth all of those out for you. You're going to pay us a rolling retainer on a monthly basis, and we're going to do your recruitment for you. We are your recruitment team. You don't have to work with everybody across the board.
Yeah, what happens if you can't deliver on a role and then there's an imbalance and then it's banking up?
You have to have a go-to plan for that.
Yeah.
And I think before you take on any type of subscription client, and as I said, we're only in the early stages of this experiment, you have to really evaluate that organisation and be confident that you could take on and deliver all of their work. And a lot of the time you can do that by evaluating their org chart, the roles types that they're going to have, because there's a predictability factor that you can anticipate based around tenures. And I would say if you're not confident, they are not. If you're not confident, you could knock it out of the ballpark. You're not doing that organisation a service by putting them on that type of model.
Yeah.
You'd be doing yourself and them a disservice. So it's really about getting the right client.
Yeah, definitely. And how many clients have you got? How far are you through the experiment?
At the very early stages.
Very early
We've
stages.
got one.
Yeah. And how long is that for?
It's a 12-month renewal.
Nice.
Nice.
So they just pay, let's say on the first business day of each month, they pay their 10 grand and you just sort out all their recruitment for their business.
Yes. But again, you've got to be careful in how you cost this out, because what if they scaled really quickly and you were doing a lot of work for just 10 grand? So in our costing model, we're experimenting. There's a limited number of roles per year. There's carve-outs as well, and you have to be really careful about that. Otherwise, you can do a lot of work for what ends up being, not a great subscription.
How did you kind of conceptualize this and figure out, let's pitch this company and figure out if they'll take the bait, so to speak?
Mainly by listening to clients' concerns. One of the, clients love to complain about recruiters. And here's the thing I know about recruiters. We all work really hard for our clients. I have never met a recruiter that is not trying to do their finest work for their clients. So in just understanding that it's having to have multiple relationships, I've got to always re-explain my org chart, or, they don't understand where we get our funding from, or, I've had to repeat to so-and-so, we're at this stage of maturity in our businesses. Listening to that as a pain point, and also from our internal perspective, I constantly want to figure out smarter ways that we can do our business. How can we work? How can we be less busy but much more powerful. And also from a cash flowing perspective, I don't want 100,000 a year. I want all of a client's spend.
Yeah, true.
That makes me sound really greedy, but
Because how much would you know, or how much would you think that clients, say they use for one agency, would be using across all facets? You reckon it's 10%? That if they're spending 100K with you, they could potentially spend in $1 million. That's how much they divvy it up across all agencies?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, one of the a really effective question you can ask is, what is your annualized recruitment spend? And how many agencies is that across? But I couldn't answer you clearly on that one. I'd have to think it through.
And what's your, those commercial questions, your 2-year recruiter probably wouldn't be asking those questions unless you've obviously trained them. How much of a commercial acumen or play or conversation should recruiters be having with clients, as opposed to being like, hey, I've got a great candidate? Like, do you teach your recruiters to show more commercial acumen when they're going into client meetings and pitching for jobs and actually deciphering what position this person's going to play in the team if we find that, and then XYZ will happen? And how would you coach someone or teach someone to focus on that?
100%. So a lot of the time, what we've found is what a client wants is slightly adjunct to what they need. And often when they're hiring under duress, they're stressed, somebody's leaving, oh my God, I've got 4 weeks to find a replacement, plus I've got to train them. They haven't had the space to give real quality thought to the new hire and the landscape of the future, so the next 10 years. So what they're usually doing is placing a big halo effect on the departing employee and going, I just need another one. But the opportunity is, what if we hire back better? Let's have a look at where you're going in the future. Let's have a look at how the job has changed, and let's have a look at how the job is going to change. And then let's hire for that future. Let's get you more value for the salary that you've been paying this person. Let me get you better skill set that's more future fit. So that's a way that it's just a belief we apply to our client engagements, and we teach our team to have those conversations. And we also teach our team, we're really, we have strong opinions on being retained and not doing contingent work when it comes to perm, because it's as I said before, you don't race your accountant. You don't ask 3 accountants to do your BAS and say, I'm going to pay the first one who comes back to me. Talent services are vital to organisations. We as an industry should be pushing for retained and exclusive work, because you will have less roles in your pipeline. You'll be spread less thin, but you will be more profitable because you'll make better conversions.
Yeah.
I was actually just having a conversation with someone today about retained and the retained pitch and the value add, and how do you get someone from contingent and try and flip them over to retained work. What are your 3 one-liners, or your 3 go-to lines that helps create the conversation around retained and why they should do it?
I think you've got to be having a conversation that your contingent recruiters aren't having. So right from the beginning, you sound different, you consult differently, and the client's instincts are like, one of these things just isn't the same here. So it's in the setup, it's how you approach. It's also in your research. If you're just rocking up to a job brief underprepared, you haven't understood the client's history, you haven't got all of the data sets that are, out there in the public domain.
What would you find?
Retention rates, recent departures from teams, number of candidates available in the market.
And is that just going through LinkedIn, say like the people that previously worked there as this company? So you can walk in and be like, hey, you obviously had 60 people through here in the last 5 years. Why is that?
Yep.
Those types of things.
100%.
Yep.
So it's in the setup, and then I think it's in the inquiry questions. So when you're understanding what their needs are, you can ask what we call a surface level question, or a real inquiry question. So surface level questions are usually what type questions? What are you looking for in talent? Deep inquiry questions usually start with how. How does this role relate to the strategic plan? How does this role have to get results, and what happens if it doesn't? So again, not just in your early stage, in your inquiry, and then sometimes I think it's just important to have a conversation with the client and say, when you retain us, we're just working on your role. Why would you want to put such a vital role with a recruiter who maybe has 10 to 15 roles on their desk, and they're having to do a little bit of all of them? I think we're a better option for you because you'll get all our time and attention.
Yeah, we broke down how much time actually gets spent on a role, and I think it was on average 4 hours for a contingent recruiter. And you work out 4 hours divided by 15 or 20K. You wouldn't pay someone $5,000 to do nothing.
No.
And then that worked really well with a few clients. They're like, yeah. And the quality of those 4 hours is so minimal because you're so stressed and under-resourced when you got 15 jobs on. And realistically, those 15 are never fully engaged. You're not getting send-outs at all of them.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about mindset because we spoke about mindset before we jumped on the podcast, and that's something that you're a big champion of. Walk us through, I guess, your ethos of mindset and why you think it's so important.
I think it's so important because our mind is where we live, right? It's the reality that you're operating from. And I learned this from Jed. His mindset is always grounded. It's always balanced, and a lot of outside influences don't ever set him off course. There's a sturdiness and a real sense of sovereignty. And in watching him versus me originally, I was really highly impacted. We're having a great month in the business. I was like, yeah, we're having a terrible month. I was right down low, And I thought, you know what? This isn't the way to be. Understanding that all of that came from my reality and what I'm thinking, and also understanding that there's a long way to go. After that second year in business, thinking we've got a big hill to climb and this is going to be a marathon. It was a self-preservation decision. I knew with the mindset I had, I was not going to get there. And so I had to learn about mindset, learn about mindset practices, and learn about what could I do to control my inner space so that I could do my best even when things were really shitty. Because if you can do your best or do well, let's be reasonable, we're not all, shiny objects when things are pretty rough. If I can still continue to operate at a level of quality when the outside circumstances are hard, I'm going to be ahead of a lot of people because our external circumstances can often defeat us. All of us have a failure pattern. When we've had a fail, you have a series of things that you do, and it's a repeatable pattern. And I thought, right, if I can shorten my failure pattern and come back quicker, maybe that will make me more robust.
What's a failure pattern?
Oh, we've all got one. So, when you've had a really bad piece of news, something doesn't go your way, you've worked so hard on something, and for some reason it comes undone and you are gutted, heart and soul gutted. If you cast your mind back to those, occasions that you've had in the past, you usually have a process that you don't even know about, but it's something that you do.
Like a subconscious pattern of behaviours. Are they like you tap your feet twice and you scroll your phone? Or?
Oh, I wish it was that. That's a good one. So an example, mine would be, I used to have a real pity party. I would feel shame. I would feel embarrassment. I'd say, you're an idiot, Elizabeth. There'd be a lot of negative self-talk. And I actually couldn't take any action. So I'd sit at my desk, not doing anything productive, waste the last 2 hours of my day. And then I would go home and I'd have an absolute pity party. I would have a rant. I'd go into a victim mindset. And even the next day, while I'd show up at work, I was still not able to shake that off. So that's my failure pattern. However, on day 3, I managed to move on from it. So I was able to identify that I have a 3-day pity party or 3-day failure pattern. When there's a big failure, this is my cycle. This is what I do. And I thought, right, now that I've identified it, I'm going to work to shorten it so that, because I'm always going to keep, well, hopefully not as often, but keep failing. But I don't want the failures to cost me as much emotionally or to stall my progress.
So how do you recognize if someone's listening right now and goes, look, I fail all the time, so I need to recognize what my patterns are and shorten it. Is it just something that you need to be consciously aware of to realize it?
I think so. Last time you had a failure or next time you do, without any judgment, just observe. Go through what you're going to go through and just observe. Go, oh, now I'm sitting at my desk for 2 hours doing nothing. Okay, no judgment. I'm just mapping. Like we map markets, I'm just mapping my failure process, and then write it down, no judgment, and then ask yourself roughly how much time does this take? You know, some people do it in half an hour. Some people, you know, it might take them 2 weeks to come out of their other side until they feel good again. Map it. Once you've mapped it, then you can do a lot of things to, I guess, shorten it. A lot of time just being aware, oh, I'm in my failure pattern, or I'm in my pity party. I'm having my pity party.
Yeah.
What about on the flip side, when everything's going really well and you over-celebrate? Because I find you can get really down if you over-celebrate everything too much. Like, you're very even keel, Blake.
Me?
As a person, yeah, nothing really weighs you. You don't get too excited, you don't get too down.
Poker face, mate.
Internally, you're just wigging out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find that, like, don't get so high on the highs that you get so low on the lows.
Yeah.
Like the Champlain and razor blades mentality.
Oh, it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. Look, that's a part of our industry, right? Because your heart and soul goes into what you do.
Why is that created, though? Do you think that's because you're expecting the money's paid?
Contingent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally contingent. No, I just think there's a lot of risk. And any time you work hard up front before the transaction happens, you are doing work for free. So that's why
You get so frustrated.
that's why we have the razor blade parts, because a lot of the times, you know, somebody's put honest work in and then it's a contingent role. So somebody else has placed it at the last moment. What we noticed, and this is only a new thing that we're looking to do, is, and this is from a great mindset coach, it's to celebrate effort, not just outcomes. There's a lot of studies done on kids with fixed mindset and kids with growth mindset. And if you celebrate effort, sturdiness, staying in when it got really hard versus, wow, you know, you just did a 60-gram placement, good on you. That can also take those that over celebrating out of it.
Yeah.
And there's more joy at work because you're celebrating not just outcomes. You're celebrating actually the behaviors we want. We want diligent recruiters who can stay in when it's hard, and they just, you know, they keep working the problem. They don't give up. They're the behaviors you want.
You know what? I don't celebrate effort enough now that you say that. Kat, my partner, we've got a 1.5-year-old, and this reminds me of what Kat told me the other day. Apparently there was a study done with like all these kids, and they had all these questions. They got all the people that answered the right way. 50% of them, they said, "You're so smart, great job." And the other 50%, they said, "Such a great effort, great job." They asked them a new set of questions. The people that they said great effort tried really hard to do the next set of questions correctly, and the people that just thought that they were smart didn't try as hard because they just think they're smart.
That's right. Who was the tennis player who used to chuck the tantrums? Was it John McEnroe?
Back in the day, or the most recent one?
Oh, no, back in the day.
Sorry.
I'm thinking like Bernard Tomic.
Or the
Before
current
your
guy.
time. No kidding.
Yeah.
I think it was John McEnroe. And John McEnroe had a belief that his success was based on his talent. Now, talent is a fixed mindset. I'm not his he didn't have the opinion that I can grow this skill set. He was just either talented or not. So what would happen to him when he would fail is he would have these massive tantrums, and he wouldn't be able to come back effectively from them because he didn't have the belief, I'm growing and I'm going to grow forward. That was an awful experience, but I'm going to be better as a result of that. Because he believed that it was just talent, if he failed, he was not talented. So the point I'm making is when, one of the number one things I would always say is look for growth-minded people. If somebody believes they're good at something just because it's their inherent talent, that's a fixed mindset, and it can be really dangerous because the landscapes ahead of us are changing really, really quickly, and we need people who can grow in our organisations.
So let's move on to mentoring, because I think this is really interesting. I've never heard of someone
I like the reverse one.
refer to reverse mentoring. this caught me a little bit by surprise, and in a really good way. So let's talk about Tash first. So you and Tash mentors you mentor Tash. How does that work?
Tash mentors me.
Okay, so Tash mentors you. You've also got a reverse mentor. Did you say on our call recently that you had like a bunch of mentors?
I do. I've got a whole stable of them.
We've
How
got the
many?
list.
Yeah. We've got the list of mentors.
Yeah.
Do we? Oh, I didn't see the list.
Let me talk you through.
Yeah, let's hear it. Why firstly have you got so many mentors, and secondly, how did you get so many mentors?
I have a lot of mentors because I have a lot of growing to do, and I think that wherever you can consult with people who are better, know more, have been around longer, have access to newer technologies, wherever you can collaborate to grow, I think you are always heading in the right space. And we know there's a lot of studies that say when you're getting mentorship from quality people, your personal growth is almost doubled. So I have a strong belief in being mentored, and I've been fortunate enough, I've known Tash for a long time. She's such a quality leader and she's such an asset to our industry. And she's also, her and Sinead Hourigan have been instrumental in picking me up and dusting me off at times when I've, had enough. So I think your mentors are great teachers. I also have a VC investor who's a really smart guy and has a brain like I've never seen before. He's teaching me to think differently to what we tend to do in our recruitment industry, looking at different commercialization strategies. And I have a reverse mentor. I work Jess Kimber from Metabrands.
Metabrands Rekex.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, she's a vibrant, vibrant person in the recruitment community. And I was watching what she was doing on her socials and I thought, I can learn from you. I think it's really important as leaders and as recruiters, don't just think you can only learn from mentors that are older than you or with more years of experience. Look for other people who know something different, and it doesn't matter if they're younger or newer to the industry. You could still learn from them.
What did that look like? What was Jess's response?
I linked into her and I said, I think you're doing some great work. Congratulations, on how old your business is. And we just started chatting. And then I said, hey, listen, I'd love to share information with you about some of the things that I've learned, particularly the mistakes that I've made. And she said she would love that. And then I said, would you mentor me back? So we have
That's cute.
We have a 1 hour session every month, and I mentor her on something, and then she mentors me on something. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, so we've just spoken about 3 mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any point in these conversations with your mentors that you feel either 1, you're not getting value out of the conversation, or 2, you're not providing value out of the conversation? Do you ever get some sort of weird vibe of like, oh, geez, I'm really taking up this person's time and I've got nothing to give back?
Yeah. So sometimes, with people that know a lot more than me, I think, I'm very clearly the mentee. I have nothing to trade back. I can't enrich their knowledge pool with something. And in those situations, so with Camille Morin, who's the VC that I work with, that's a paid mentorship.
Yep.
I am paying him for his time. So that's the trade there.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely. There
How much
are
does that cost?
I think it's about $160 an hour.
Okay.
So not
that's
extraordinary.
palatable.
Yeah, that's
And the
totally
information's
worth
crazy.
it.
It's
Yeah.
really exciting to work with somebody who's outside of our industry because we can borrow the brilliance of other industries.
How do you find this? Do you Google like mentors for hire?
A bit like we recruit.
Bullshit.
I go out and I look for really good people and then I screw up my courage and I just ask, would you mentor me?
Have you ever been rejected?
Not yet, but I'm always still slightly frightened that it might be.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking about, no one asks for me for mentorship, so I don't know what it'd be like on the receiving end. I guess I'd be pretty flattered. I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'd love to help you out. What can I help with kind of thing. So I think my general stance on people is people like feeling useful And if someone can feel useful, they'll generally go out of their way to be useful. So when you've got someone that's asking for help in some capacity, mentoring, I see you doing this really good, how did you get around this? Most people want to try and give you the answers to your questions.
I think so. I think there's also mentee etiquette. If you're going to ask somebody to mentor you, got to show up on time. You've got to show them that you're growing based on what, you can't. Have you ever had that? Oh, could I just pick your brain? Could I just prick your brain? Can't come off as entitled, right? You must show up helping that mentor understand that I value you. I'm serious about this and I'm going to do the work.
Yeah, do the work, because that's all they want. Like when you've worked with, older people and they want to pass it on to the younger generation and give you some wisdom and inspiration, nothing's more annoying than sitting there for an hour with someone, telling them, opening up everything about it, and then they just don't go and implement anything.
Particularly if it's a non-paid mentor, somebody you connect with in industry and they're just out of the generosity of their heart sharing information with you for your betterment, not theirs. You've got to do
That's how they get paid, is like the fulfillment of you doing well.
I'm going to put a poll up. I'm going to have to put a poll up on LinkedIn. Do you want Blake to mentor you? How much would you pay? $50 a day, $100 a day, $1,000 a day. We'll see what happens.
There's also heaps of networks, There's the Entrepreneurs Connection Network that you can get involved in, and they have a bunch of networks, and there's lots of formalized ways of doing this. But I think the best way is to observe, seek out the people who are doing something really well, and just ask. Because what's the worst thing? They're either going to say no, or yes, and it's free, or yes, but you have to pay me some big bucks. And you can then decide.
Honestly, I've actually never paid. Sorry, let me start that again. Everything that I've ever paid for, I don't think I've ever been disappointed with the value that I've gotten from it. I'm a bit of a, for some reason, I'm very trigger happy with online courses. I'll see an online course come up about how to write better headlines. I bought a course the other day. I think it was $500. Don't worry, mate. It's not on the Amex. And it was like how to tell better stories. And there was another one around something to do with detoxing, like how to detox and be healthier and all this kind of stuff. And they're all like usually between like $300 and $500. And before I ever bought a course, my first course I ever bought was like maybe $2,500, and it was like it taught you how to create a course, like an online coaching course, basically. And the sheer value that I got out of it, I was like, my mindset going into buying it, because it had a 30-day money back guarantee, and it was $2,500. I'm thinking, this is probably the wrong thing to think, but I was like, I'm going to get in there. I'm going to punch this course out in 30 days. And I'm going to get my money back. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But then I got in there and I got through like half of it, and I was like, I could never do that to these guys. They have put so much value. Yeah. So what that lesson taught me is the more value you give people, the more people want to give back to you. So if you just focus on as a mentor, as anything, then if you just continually to give more value, even without asking for money, even if you do ask for money and you just over deliver, it's really unlikely that you're ever going to run into a bad situation. And that's how I found with like paying for either courses, mentors, online things, that when people over deliver, you just feel like obliged and happy that you've actually upskilled in some capacity of like an area of interest. So I've never paid for a full proper mentor though. I think that's something that I'd definitely be keen to do. So what, you just go to, what did you say it was? Recruitment, it was Entrepreneurs Group?
Yep, the Entrepreneurs Group. I know also through the RCSA, I think it's called the 10 Networks, where I think it's more of a forum, but they connect you with other business owners and things like that.
I love that.
Have
you been much involved in the RCSA?
Yeah, over the years. Quite a while ago now, I was on the RCSA Council. This year I just went to that conference at Hamilton.
Oh,
fantastic! Nice. So on and off throughout the years.
And what would you do? Like, how do you upskill your recruiters? Because not everyone in your agency came from another agency. Like, how do you upskill them? How do you make them better? How do you get this wisdom from mentors and deliver it in a way that they can understand, implement, action consistently?
Because we're still a smaller firm, I think we've got the advantage to work one-on-one. So, on-demand training. We also have a really good onboarding, but training on recruitment is a process, and that can be trained, but consulting skills, how to say no really nicely, how to control a timeline for a client, how to communicate so that the client knows what's ahead. These are all the soft skills that I don't think we get a lot of in recruitment. And it's just about working one-on-one with them, or whenever we see a trend or an internal area that we need to spot train on, we'll bring somebody in who is the subject matter expert on that. But I hire for people who are obsessed with learning, and I hire for growth mindset because the future is going to be pretty intense, and I think we need to keep learning all the time.
What do you ask someone to know if they've got a growth mindset? Or they're a learner?
Questions based around their beliefs. So if to identify if somebody's got a growth mindset, you ask questions based around their belief of whether their talent is inherent or they've worked on it and that it can be improved over time. And when you listen for answers where people are like, no, that's just me. I was born with it. I'm amazing. Then you ask a series of questions, again, how-based questions, not what questions, proper inquiry questions to identify if that is a fixed belief and do they believe they can get any better. Because if they don't believe they can get any better, if they just believe they're awesome, there's no compelling need for them to grow. So they're never going to want to learn
That's
new
why
things.
if they identify as a 300K biller, no matter how good the market is, they'll always bill 300K. Yeah.
That's right.
And then same with $1 million biller. You have to actually identify in yourself what you are and who you could become.
Yeah, so fixed mindset versus growth mindset, that's how we hire for that. And how do you identify lifelong learners? I ask, well, what are you reading? What was the last training session you attended that wasn't provided to you by your company? Who are you following that's leading out there? What's new that you've adopted in the last 3 months that's working for you? And when there's a silence...
That's 99% of people though.
Yeah.
No, it's not. There's heaps of learners out there.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe we're just not asking the right question, Declan. That's such a fixed mindset thing to say.
Declan, it's time to learn.
Okay, so you're almost hitting the 11-year mark in business.
To flash forward, because there's a lot of new businesses coming up in recruitment. How many times have you had those conversations when you said Tash pulled you back into line, or you're like, I can't do this, or like, but because now
heaps.
Yeah.
I thought I was, and I'm happy to be really open about this because sometimes you just get people's show reels or you just hear the best bits of founding a business. I've had lots of moments, particularly in the first 5 years, where I had enough and I felt like a significant failure. On the outside, we looked perfect. Not perfect. We looked like a great company. It was doing well, but we had things going wrong and this wasn't working perfectly and we'd lose amazing people. So I would say often.
What does 10 years look like?
It's more stable, it's more confident. We know who we are. We have our systems. We've had time to make sure the model works. So there's less significant moments of doubt, but I do question often and think, are we going in the right direction? Am I taking us where we need to go? Is my data right? How is my judgment? I think when you're constantly questioning yourself, I've just a big fear of ever becoming too confident, because sometimes when you're too confident, you can confident off a cliff.
For sure. So now that it's been 10 years, what does the next 5 years look like? Like, what are your goals now?
Exciting. So in the next 5 years, what we're wanting to do is prove if we can refine the subscription model. And that will be a key area of the business. We're also launching a new service in 2026, and that we hope that will be talent insights and talent consulting, because we love data, and I think there's a way to commercialize a lot of the data that we as recruitment agencies sit on. And the rest of our plan is just to continue with our nice, stable, predictable growth, because we've learnt when we grew too quickly that we don't have the system set up for that. So predictable growth, happy, healthy team members, celebrating effort, just create a good, healthy, happy company.
Awesome. So no headcount, no revenue goals. It's just we want to roll out a couple of services that we think we could capitalize on, and we just want to continue to make sure that everyone is happy at the business.
Well, I've learnt when I've had revenue goals and headcount goals, sometimes I've learnt we were going for the wrong levers. I think your real metric is your profitability. And I've learnt that that's our best guiding light. But in terms of what are our articulated headcount, they're not firm goals, but our rough estimates of where we'd like to be. So in the next 5 years, we just want to add another 12 team members. Again, we're never, going to grow really, really rapidly.
Is there an end game? Like, are you going to sell and exit?
We don't know.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's an end game.
To be advised.
Yep, nice. Because I guess like a lot of people get into business for different reasons. A lot of people get into business to exit eventually. So, I reckon a small amount of people get into business to exit. The lion's share of what I've experienced is most people get in initially for lifestyle. Like it's mainly a lifestyle business for most people for, some people 20 years really. And they don't ever see themselves kind of exiting or selling their business. So it's always interesting to hear, other agency owners, where their mindset's at. Is it something that they're going to eventually get a manager in and kind of step back and just take a little clip for the rest of their life? Or are they going to exit and try and get a big check and go to the Bahamas and all that kind of stuff? So it's always interesting to learn, what the exit plan is for starting business. And sometimes that could be both, exit 50% and then take a step back and take the rest kind of thing. We're
still trying to figure out where ultimately we want to land. I think there's also a third option, and I see this in a lot of professional services businesses that have been built up by founders, where they step back as the investors to the business. So if you build to buy and that if you build to sell rather, and that doesn't happen, you can be very disappointed by that. If you build to stay in it forever, you've got to be really careful that you don't get old and dated, because sometimes you see founders take their company off a cliff because they haven't had the sense to hand over the leadership early enough. That's when you see those massive success and fail arcs in organisations in about a 40-year period. But I also think setting it up, stepping back, handing it over to the leadership team, management buyouts, people that are coming up behind you with the industry knowledge, that's an option as well.
Yeah, love that.
And what about market mapping? You're obviously big on data. Did you always run a good database at Randstad and prior, and when you started Kingston?
Yes and no. So at times we've run really bad databases, and that could have been because the design of the database, it wasn't sort of frictionless and easy to use for our consultants, or we hadn't been successfully telling the story about how if you organise your data beautifully, your job is just so much easier. You're not starting from scratch every time. But to your question of market maps, what are they? How do they work? So let's say we're looking for a chief risk officer, or perhaps I'm going to bid on a chief risk officer role, and I work in the risk space. That's my desk. One of the most effective things I can have is a map of all the chief risk officers in Queensland or Australia, all the companies that they work for, and then you can code and utilize that market map depending on the variable. Let's say you want to sort it by who are chief risk officers in the ASX listed companies, or who are chief risk officers in companies with less than 400 staff, who are all the chief risk officers in South East Queensland. So you can either do that in your database environments, or you can utilize pivots in Excel to get through that data. But most of our databases these days are set up. I mean, we're on JobAdder. I find it fantastic for really filtering our data really quickly and effectively.
And clients would be blown away if you come in and go, hey, you've got your hit list already.
Who are you going to give the job to, right?
Yeah.
The recruiter one is they're like, we'd love to do work with you. These are our fees. You're the recruiter behind them, and you come in and you say, great. So tell us a little bit about the problems we're here to help you solve. Here is the market map, and this is where we'd probably begin a lot of our activities.
I love that. That's a really good pitch in. And that would take you, it wouldn't take you that long. Like you could get a really rough idea of the market if you just, I don't know.
Yeah, but thinking smarter, your market's mapped. Wouldn't you just go to all those clients one by one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're telling me all the work that you've done, you're going to capitalise on it.
Who would have thought?
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll get you. All right.
There's no seek job ad chasing. There's none of that. It's literally.
It's just a beautiful list that's.
And then that's just how you build a cold desk as well.
Is that how you would build a cold desk?
I don't know. I think it really depends on the segment you're working in. I've only worked across accounting, finance, marcoms, risk, the C-suite. Yeah. So, I don't know if that's how you would build a desk in IT. Couldn't answer with any form of credibility.
Yeah, for sure. No, this has been really good. Very insightful. Any recruiters listening, what would your probably number one tip be for mindset? Meditation. I hear people say meditation all the time. I've never been good at that.
I don't get into it.
Yeah.
I think you've got to know that coming to understand that mindset is a muscle that you can develop. So where it is today is not where you're going to be the rest of your life. And if you work on it by understanding how mindset can change, getting as much information into you as you can about mindset, and also being willing to try techniques, but throw them away if they don't work for you. Not everything is going to be great mindset training for you, but understand it's a muscle. You can build it over time, and it is something you can control.
Love that. Oh, that's awesome.
Perfect. And what's your favourite beer? You love brewing beer?
I love lagers.
Lagers, nice.
Oh, mate, thank you for saying that, because pale or ales in general, they give you a headache. They're like heavy, bloaty.
Gross.
Just a nice, crisp lager gets you going.
Exactly. Simple.
I was hoping you'd actually bring in some lager with you.
No.
What's it called? Do you name him?
No, I haven't named
Surely
it.
you name him.
Sam
No.
names his. One of our mates from H People. He it's called the Lawn. He lives at Petrie. He calls it the Launton Lager.
Yeah.
I like that name.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to organise a catch-up and try some of your lagers, I think.
We can call it Lizzie Fizzy.
Lizzie Fizzy.
There you go.
I love
It's
that.
a terrible name.
How
That sounds
good.
like a seltzer. Fizzy Lizzie.
Fizzy Lizzie. Well, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your experience, answering our questions. I know there was a lot of them, and we really appreciate you sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me.
No
Thanks,
worries.
Liz.
Thanks, Liz. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another Confessions of a Recruiter podcast with Blake and Declan. We hope you enjoyed and got a lot of value and insights out of this episode. If you do have any questions or you would like to recommend someone to come on the Confessions podcast, we would love any introductions. And remember the rule of the podcast: like, share, and recommend it to a friend. Until next time.